Hello, everyone, and welcome to Self Care Sunday. I'm your host, Misty, and you're listening to Sisters Against Mental Abuse. Today, we have on our show Saundre Allen of Queens in Therapy. She's a licensed clinical social worker and a self care expert. And we are so happy to have you here today, Saundre.
Hey y'all, I am super glad to be here. It's a wonderful day here in California. It's nice and sunny. So perfect timing to be talking about self-care. I'm actually sitting here right now with my gym clothes on because once we're done, I'm heading over there to pick up some weights.
I'm still in my gym clothes because I came from the gym. So
Awesome.
yes, we on the same thing.
Yes,
So I
yes.
kind of want to just dive into here. I met you on Instagram and I loved your content. It's
Thank
so
you.
positive. I love the images that you use and all your graphics.
Thank
I mean,
you.
some of your quotes, and so I'm so happy to have you here. I kind of just want to dive in though. What is your own story and how did you get into social work and mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me give you your flowers too. So, thank you so much for just making space for us to talk about mental abuse amongst Black women in our community because we don't always have spaces where we can do that vulnerably. So, I appreciate you doing that. And this avatar, honey, with these glasses and this mug is just giving me life. So, we'll talk about how I can get one of those later.
Yes. She's
But
actually the person that designed this on Instagram. I think it's like Trap Dolls Art. So, I mean, I'll definitely send your information. I probably should have shouted her out earlier. But yes, that's where I got it from. I'll send you her information.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, how did I get started in social work? Well, for me, it started definitely when I was younger, a young girl. I grew up in East Oakland, and in my household, there was my mom and my younger brother and sister. And so I just watched my mom suffer so much from the impacts of generational trauma, and racism and oppression in particular, right? And watching her just struggle with the stress of trying to raise three children by herself with limited income and support. And I think, through the love of my mother, I really started to realize, oppression causes so much pain for folks, and I wanted to prevent as much of it as I possibly could. So when it came to, my household, I was doing things like helping my mom raise my younger brother and sister. If I could pick up little jobs here and there, I did it. I braided hair for the longest, and I would bring that money home, share it with my mom, help her to make decisions, just really doing everything I can to lessen the load for her. And so, as I got older and got to college and learned about psychology, I said, wow, here's a way that I can offer that same support and healing to a bunch of other Black women, and learn how to do it in a way that's healthy, right? Where there's some boundaries that I'm able to keep for myself, and boundaries that I'm able to teach my clients to use. So that was the beginning of my journey, was just growing up, seeing so much pain and suffering, and trying my best, or really, really wanting to end it for our community in particular.
Oh, wow. So you were at a young age taking on so much already.
Girl.
Oh my goodness. So that's also something that I would like to get into a little bit more is that I personally feel like Black women are carrying the community.
Yeah.
We do everything from taking care of the kids, raising the kids, doing the work, starting businesses, going to school, like doing so much, and I know it's exhausting mentally. And so that is something that I want to dive into deeper at a later date. I don't know if you'll come on again, but if you
Missy, you
please,
already know I'm in there. You better
yes.
know.
But for this episode, we're gonna talk all about like self-care and self-love. So I have gone through what boundaries are a little bit in the past, but I want to hear from the expert. So how would you define boundaries to someone who may not be familiar? Say someone like myself. I didn't grow up in an environment where boundaries were present and I didn't understand what it meant when I first heard it. So can you talk a little bit about boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I often describe boundaries is that there are limits that we set to intentionally protect our mind, body, spirit, and assets, right? So what are the things that you're doing and saying that let people know not to cross certain lines with you? Okay. And there's several different types of boundaries. And I think this is part of sometimes the issue with us setting them is that we don't often know what all the categories are for boundaries. I know for me growing up, we were often taught, don't let nobody put their hands on you and don't let nobody take your stuff, right? So, but that's just two. There's actually six. So there's boundaries around your intellect, meaning your thoughts and ideas. So not letting people belittle you or make you feel small. There's boundaries around your emotions. So letting folks know when they have hurt you and being willing to have some conversations about repair. Boundaries around time. This one I think is often huge, specifically for those of us who are out here working, taking care of children, taking care of family members, like really trying to have some rigid boundaries around your time so that you can do things like self-care. There are boundaries around material items. So making sure we are not handing out more money than we got coming in. Okay, so there's material boundaries, sexual. So how do I want to be touched or not, and being able to say that. And then lastly, physical boundaries. Do I want to be hugged or not? Do I want a handshake or not? So, the cool thing about being in therapy is that it is a space where you and your therapist can kind of assess where you are within those six boundaries. And help you come up with ways to enhance them or to create them, because you might not even, be conscious of how to have intellectual boundaries, for example.
Wow. For me, that was a wow moment because, like you said, hey, don't let nobody touch you. Don't let nobody touch your stuff. But
Right.
then you also mentioned sexual boundaries, boundaries around time, intellect. And so I just want to run through those six again. So it was.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it back. So physical, intellectual, sexual, emotional, material, and time. Those are the six boundaries that are really helpful to explore in the beginning of your boundary work.
Okay. Because you know what? And so I'm gonna go off topic just a little bit, but so
Mhm.
I have an episode where we analyzed the TV show Made, and I did talk about um financial abuse a little bit, and within that I talked about how we hear so many times there's, usually a Black woman and she has a boyfriend and he's using her car without her
Mhm.
permission and things like
Mhm.
that. And in
Mhm.
my mind that felt like a boundary of some sort, but I think
Sure
that
did.
it aligns with what you just said about material boundaries.
Mhm.
It's not just physical, it's not just mental or emotional. In terms of your things, you're allowed to
Yes.
have boundaries too.
Yes. We have to protect our assets, right? Because we don't ever want to be in a situation where we can't take care of ourselves because we've had, porous boundaries, right? Where we're just
Okay.
letting people come in our lives and take whatever they want or need. Like our
Mhm.
priority has to be ourselves first. And it may sound selfish, it actually is selfish, but you cannot exist unless you are a little bit selfish.
Yeah. Yep. I
Okay.
definitely hear that. And in
Mhm,
setting these boundaries,
mhm, mhm.
people don't want to step on the toes of others. But if someone is taking your car, they're stepping on your toes. So
That's right.
so you briefly mentioned self-care. So we hear these terms a lot, self-care and self-love. What
Mhm.
how would you define those two things?
Well, for self-care, I have this fun little acronym that I like to use. And that is self-care is selfishly exploring love and fun, causing a replenishment of energy. I'll say it one more time. Self-care is selfishly exploring love and fun, causing a replenishment of energy, right?
Wow. And so how did you come up with it? Selfishly exploring love and fun, causing a replenishment of energy. How'd you come
You
up with
know,
that?
was so funny. Do you remember when we were in grade school and we used to do those name poems where you write your name out vertically and then next to it you write words that describe who you are?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
That's basically what I use, but I was just trying to figure out a way to explain to people that self-care is all about trying to get your vibrations up, trying to replenish some things that may have been taken or that you expel to get things done, and that it should really be grounded in love and fun and exploration. Like, you don't have to know what your hobbies are. We feel a lot of pressure to know that. Like, I have to know what
Yes.
that I love. You
Yes.
don't. Your hobby could be, I'm trying every new thing so that I can figure out what it is that I love.
I
That's
noticed that. Yes, especially with the pandemic, it's so strange. It's like when I meet new people now
mm-hmm.
and they say, "Hey, so what are your hobbies? What do you like to do?" I'm stuck. I'm like, I go to the gym
Right,
and I eat. Like
right.
so okay, so a hobby can be exploring hobbies.
Yes.
Okay, so selfishly exploring love and fun causing a replenishment of energy. And do you have any fun acronyms for self-love?
I don't yet, but you know what, Misty, because you brought it to my attention, I'll meditate on that one.
Let me know. So how would you define self-love, and how would it be different from self-care? Are they the same thing or
Well, they're definitely tied, right? Like, we need self-love for me is the foundation, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can't do self-care if I don't love myself enough to know that I deserve an abundance of love, of health, of respect, of wisdom, of money, and so forth, right? So I need to really, really know those things before I'm able to act on self-care. So I describe self-love as this confident energy that propels you towards wellness, right? If I really, really know that I deserve to be healthy, then going to the gym is not going to feel like pressure or an annoyance. It's going to feel like a reward or a gift to myself because I deserve it.
wow. So self-love is the foundation for the practice of self-care. So because I love myself,
Mhm.
I want to take the best care of myself. So going to the gym is not something I hate anymore because I understand it's a part of my self-care. Is that what you mean?
It's a part of my self-care, yes. And it's a part of the way that I love myself. I know, right, that I deserve to be healthy. And working out is one of the ways that I increase my health and wellness.
Okay, okay. All right. So let's take it back to boundaries. So
Mhm.
you defined boundaries. You told us that there were 6 of them. 6. And so how can self-care, self-love, and boundaries be tied together?
Yeah, well, they're always working together in tandem, right? So I'll give an example here for myself. So as a therapist, you know, I talk to my lovely clients all day or throughout the workday, usually from about 9 to 5, and I have breaks in between for sure. But once 5 p.m. hits, I am usually pretty tired and I need a bit of a break just to reset, just to get my energy back aligned, get my vibrations up. And so one of the boundaries that I've created around that is that hour, that first hour after I get off work, I don't engage with anybody. I'm not texting, I'm not calling, I'm not watching the news, I'm not checking social media. I'm just sitting and relaxing. That may mean listening to some uplifting music, making myself a cup of tea, petting my dog, but I'm not engaging with anything that's going to cause me to expel energy, right? And so I told my family this, and now it's so funny. Now they know. Like, they'll text me or something, and then I won't respond. They'll be like, "Oh, you probably taking your after work break, so I'll hit you later."
And they already know, right? And that's how it should be.
They already know, right? But setting that boundary gives me the time, right, to have some space to practice self-care. And self-love gave me the confidence that I needed to say, hey, I can't do it that first hour. I got to take care of me first.
Yeah, so that self-love enables you to practice self-care, but you can practice that once you have boundaries. It allows you to practice those things, right?
Absolutely. Because that's the biggest thing that I see in my work with my clients is that I'll hear things like, well, I don't have the time to practice self-care, or no one respects my time. And usually the missing link in there is being direct about the limits around your time, right? So for this hour, I'm going to be in therapy. Do not knock on the door. Do not open the door. Do not disturb for this hour, period.
Okay, okay. And it's very specific too. Can you briefly go over how someone can start setting, actually no, not someone, Black women specifically. What are some of the tips that Black women can use to start setting and enforcing boundaries like right now?
Well, the first one is definitely going through those 6 categories that we listed and just doing some self-reflection. How am I with setting boundaries around my body, around my assets, around my time, around my emotions, and just kind of doing a self-assessment to see where you are. And I'll give you 3 categories that can also help with that. So when you work with a therapist, the 3 things that we're usually looking for as we're listening to you talk about boundaries is if they're porous, meaning that you have a difficult time setting boundaries with other people. Are they rigid? Meaning that you have a lot of boundaries and it makes it difficult for folks to connect with you or support you. Or are they healthy? Meaning that you're able to tell people no, and you're also willing to accept someone else's no.
Okay, so I guess, wow. Okay, so whether the boundaries are porous, rigid, or healthy.
Mhm.
And so people should start, Black women should start by assessing their boundaries. Now, do you have any tips or advice for how they can enforce them? I know you talked about with your family, you let them know, hey, this is my private time between this time and this time. Leave me alone. So, do you have any tips? Because I think that might be an issue for us because we have so much responsibility. Typically, we might feel a sense of guilt. Um,
Yeah,
when it comes to, I mean, even money, hey, I really don't want to loan this family member money, but this is family and I'm obligated.
right,
Or, hey, I wanted this to be my quiet time, but my mom is calling and I love my mom and I feel bad ignoring the call. So how
right.
can they start enforcing these boundaries once they've assessed them?
So one thing that I always tell the queens I work with is that boundary work is uncomfortable. I cannot make it comfortable for you or for your family or for your friends. It's going to be uncomfortable to say no. And part of this is deeply attached to the way that Black women have been socialized in this country to say yes to everything, to be the strong Black woman, to do everything. And we simply cannot. It's inhumane to expect one person to be able to do everything, you know? So breaking that pattern is going to feel uncomfortable. And it is normal for other people to be resistant to your boundaries or feel uncomfortable about your boundaries, maybe even have emotions about them, because folks, again, are not used to us saying no. But none of those things should be the reason why you decide not to take care of yourself.
Okay, okay. And these are things that I've noticed as well. So I want to take it back to self-care.
Mhm.
There is a big push. So whenever we think about self-care, we think about going to the spa, or we think about getting our nails done, or we think
Right.
about spending money. So how can Black women specifically practice self-care that is not so consumer driven?
Yeah, I love that so much. And honestly, I think that even starting your practice off with trying to find things that don't require you to spend a lot of money definitely goes back to that boundary around protecting your assets, right? Like you do not have to spend $150 at a spa in order to feel good about yourself. It could be one of them, but it doesn't have to be something that we're doing all the time. So one of the things that I often encourage folks to do is look around your home. So often we have so many self-care activities at home that we're not even using. Like, have you opened up that bubble bath set that you got last year for Christmas? Have you broken out that crochet kit that you bought yourself 3 years ago that you haven't started yet? When's the last time you went into the kitchen, just looked in the cabinet, got creative and made yourself a nice meal, right? So there are things around our home sometimes that we just need to re-engage with to help us get started. Now I'm preaching. I know one of the things I need to do, I bought myself a resin kit on Amazon.
Ooh.
Some years back, and I made one thing. I haven't made anything else. So I'm going to go back. You know how that is. So I'm gonna go back and pick that up. But take some inventory of your house. See what you have at home that you may not have been using. And then the next thing too is go outside. Go outside. Do you remember being younger and how exciting it would be to be able to go outside?
Yes, yes, especially at school. Yes.
Yes. You was like running to the playground. Can't wait to finish your chores on Saturday morning so you can get out there in the sun, right?
Mhm.
So reconnect with that energy, reconnect with that excitement about being outside. Go take a walk, go to a local garden or park. Take your time, enjoy the view, look at some flowers, look at the trees,
Hmm.
feel the sun on your skin, close your eyes and feel the breeze, smell the fresh air. Just be present with nature. Can be such a quick way, to boost your mood and help you to feel better.
Well, for those of us who are in the Midwest, look, maybe look out the window. I don't know.
Yes,
We
yes,
finally
yes.
had a day that was above 40 degrees today, so I definitely got out myself. But yes, I
Beautiful.
understand it's something about being in the sunlight that just, I don't know, I love it, and I completely understand. And even something as simple as coloring, right? Because I found some
Yes,
old crayons. I have so many crayons that I
yes.
didn't know I
Me
had, and I
too.
just sat down, turned off my phone, turned everything off, and started coloring.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Me too. One thing that I say about coloring, I know it's trending right now to do the adult mindfulness coloring books with the little tiny itty bitty
Yeah.
pictures, and they're beautiful and they can be fun. And for some folks, they can be a bit overwhelming because it takes a lot of time to finish one page. So I often tell people, go old school, go and get you one of those jumbo coloring books where on the page is like one hamburger with eyeballs and it'll take you 10 minutes to color it.
Yes.
Look, get you something that you can just do it real quick and feel good about
Yes. So I want to take things back to a little bit, just a little bit more serious. So during the pandemic, there was so much chaos,
it. Yeah.
with, people being abused physically and
Yeah.
just having their lives taken, when
Mhm.
it came to like law enforcement. So however you feel about it, whatever you think about it, it was a chaotic time,
Right.
and it was a lot of pressure. It was a
Mhm.
lot of just chaos in the air.
Mhm.
So when things hit this boiling point again, I mean, when there's protest or when there's something that's very emotional happening, what kind of tips or advice do you have for Black women that they don't do well? Maybe they're feeling stressed out at work because of what's
Mhm.
happening in the news. I mean, right now we got the Ukraine situation.
Right.
Some people can be overwhelmed. So what kind of advice or suggestions do you have for
Yeah.
them to protect themselves?
Yeah, I mean, because all of those things are overwhelming. And for Black folks, Black women in particular, too, watching other Black women being murdered or attacked, or even the recent things that have been coming up around Black women and suicide, all of those things can be trauma triggers for us. bring up very painful memories, bring up feelings of grief, that we have had for years. And so it is important for us to protect our energy. And yes, you want to be aware. We always want to be aware of what's going on in our community, but we want to give ourselves permission to set some limits around how much you're taking in, right? So, when all that was going on, I had just started my private practice full time. And so most of all my clients were talking about the things that were going on in the news, right? And so when I got off work, I didn't watch any news. I physically, emotionally, I couldn't take any more in, right? And so I had to be honest with myself about that and disengage from the media and instead focus my energy on a self-care activity. And I think that's sometimes the biggest thing, is that we feel this pressure to watch the news and be on Instagram and comment on everything and always have something to say. And we can't always do that. Sometimes you do have to stop and take care of you first, So that's one thing. Set some boundaries and limits with media and practice some self-care for sure. And then, the other thing too is, once you feel like you've kind of gotten a little bit of your grounding, you're feeling a little bit better, your vibrations are up a bit, find ways that you can be active in your community. And it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but it could be going to check on a neighbor that you care about, who you haven't heard from in a while, or joining a group at your church that does things for other Black folks in the community, or joining a social justice group, right? But finding ways to love other Black people, especially during times of pain in our community, can really make us feel good, and definitely is an act of resistance in itself.
So I have one more question before we kind of close out here.
Mhm.
What other advice or tips do you have for Black women that want to start their healing journey, or they want to start their self-love journey, but they just don't know what to do and where to start?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what I just said around like getting in touch with yourself and listening to your inner voice. Like, really ask yourself, what are some things that I've always wanted to do, that I always wanted to try, places that I've wanted to go. Maybe take some time and just write those out. And then over the next couple of months, try to experience one of those things, right? Oftentimes there's nothing really stopping us but ourselves. So, really increase that self-care by standing strong in your self-love, and allow yourself to explore what might help you feel closer to healing or closer to wellness, right? And it's so many different ways that you can do it. I love therapy. Of course, I'm a therapist. But that's not the only way. Like, people experience healing through yoga, through Reiki, through church and spirituality, through dance. It might even be a combination of many different things. So, our path to healing isn't linear, and neither should the work be. Explore and figure out what works well for you, and be open to change. Like, there's going to be periods in your life where the self-care practices that you have today may not fit what you might need tomorrow. And that's okay. That's okay. It's this constant practice of listening to yourself and finding things that make you feel good.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm so happy
Yeah.
that you came on. I love everything that you stand for.
Thank you.
So please, tell us what you're working on. If you have any projects, I know that you're a phenomenal speaker, but I found you on Instagram. So tell us all your socials, and if you have anything coming up that you want the listeners to know about, just share that with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Well, right now, in my practice, Queens in Therapy, I am focusing on supporting Black women with navigating through anxiety, depression, and trauma. And so that really has been my main focus, but I do have some other interviews and podcasts coming up. So please follow my Instagram page. It is Queen, the word Queen, the letter S, the letter N, and the word therapy. Queens in Therapy is where you can find me.
All right. And thank you again. We will try to bring you back. I would love to have you back on
Please, this
another
is so
episode.
much fun.
All right. Thank you. And that concludes our episode for today. Thank you for joining us. If you are a Black woman who has a story to share about mental abuse, whether with family, romantic partner, friendship, or you are a Black woman in the mental health field, please reach out to us, samatogethernow@gmail.com. We are on Facebook as Sisters Against Mental Abuse, and we are also on Instagram at samatogethernow. Thank you for joining us, and remember, mental abuse is abuse.